And that piece of simplicity and clarity just like shifted and removed this whole block. And since then, I've been able to really move forward in this meaningful way. This is Only the Bold, where I have deep, riveting, and fascinating conversations with truly phenomenal humans. I'm your gay, ADHD-having, and compulsively curious host, Gia Goodrich, and among many things, I can't get enough of hearing people's incredible stories and getting inside the way their brains work. Each week, I have conversations where we dig below the surface and really uncover everything it takes to live a truly bold life. Despite the messages we get from media and popular culture, the boldest, truest version of yourself is exactly what the world needs. Hello. Hi, hey, how are yas? I am so excited today because it's our anniversary. We are officially 1 year old. And let me tell you, this has been a fantabulous, deeply interesting, complicated year in taking this project from 0 to 100, growing it into the thing that it is, pivoting along the way, all of this like magic, the amazing conversations that we've had, the community that we've built. I just feel so grateful. So in order to celebrate, what we are going to do is go over 5 of the iconic moments from the podcast. Now, the kicker is I have no idea what they are. Our amazing editor, Danae Popovich, who has been, I think, the only person other than myself that I know for sure, has listened to every single episode. He's just absolutely amazing. And he picked these clips. So I'm excited to dig into those with you and like walk through memory lane. But before we do that, I just wanted to do a little quick, check-in. Hey, hi, how are yas? Because I have been, as you know, if you've listened to any previous episodes, very wavy lately. I have had really wonderful highs, really deep lows, and I am not quite sure exactly what the whole impetus was, all of that stuff. But thankfully, I just want you to know I am coming out of it. I'm saying this because I am coming out of it both because of my thinking and the modalities that I've been leveraging and all of this stuff, but also because I am on medication. I just want to be very clear. This is not medical advice. I'm just sharing my experience. But one of the things that I think still is very stigmatized is seeking this kind of external input in order to get things back on track. And one of the things that I realized is that I was expending so much energy just trying to get my emotions to a kind of baseline that I could then act from, that like, let's say easily 40 to 60% of my attention, energy, and focus was just trying to arrive at neutrality because everything was sliding into this like dark, poor me place. Now, that said, there were some reasons for that, right? Like as soon as I get into this like workout, filthy AF program, and I have this back injury that has been really rough and rocky. Even though it's healing, it's been a lot slower than I would have liked. A few months ago, broke up with my then partner and had to negotiate how to live and change my life and a lot of things externally. But I just knew, thinking about my own internal experience, I just had this understanding that the resilience that I've had in the past, the bounce back, the refresh rate just like wasn't there. And so I've been working with this company, and this is not sponsored, but maybe in the future, called Cerebral, that is this kind of prescription model where you sign up for a monthly fee. And with that, you work with a prescriber and then also a care counselor to like navigate all of this stuff. I was doing it for ADHD meds because that was something in the last few months that I've gone back onto to try to like mitigate everything also and be, just like a little bit productive with my life instead of swimming in the bog of ethereal lights and confusion and dysmorphic sounds and just all of this stuff that can happen when my brain is not like actually a light. So I reached out to them, whatever, and I've been working with a prescriber that I absolutely love. And when I finally talked to her about this, I was like, I do think I'm ready. She was like, okay, I've got you. Talked me through everything. I got on something, and I just feel like there's this lightness again. Instead of like, wearing these worn down sneakers that have like zero bouncy effect, right? That no shock absorption, and you're feeling like every pebble that you're stomping on. I feel like I got like new, fresh kicks that I have some like cush and some bounce. And so I'm feeling really excited about that, even though there's still a lot of things that aren't 100% different than even they were like a week or 2 weeks ago. So I just want to let you know that because I fucking love you and I appreciate you being here listening to these rich conversations, but also like being there for my journey as I'm trying to figure myself out, figure out how to be the most optimized, bold version of myself, like you probably are. So yeah, I love you. Let's get into clip number 1. And again, I have no idea what this is, so we're going to find out together. So I live in Portland. There's the whole underground tunnels that they used to kidnap people who would get drunk in bars. And so you can take this tunnel tour and they'll show you that still some of these bars are still operating. And there are like literally trap doors that the barkeep would just like, this person is drunk out of their mind, looks muscly, let's get him in the underground trade and just like drop them into these underground tunnels and then send them. Yeah, crazy history of things. Okay, what's funny to me, one, is that I'm not quite sure where this is going, but I can kind of hear it, is that there's just like a nervous energy, which I think is one of those things that that has been kind of flexy in the podcast. And I don't know if you've noticed, if you've listened to multiple episodes, but just like any other human, for whatever reason, and I've never been somebody that's been like starstruck per se by people, like celebrities and things like that don't really like rock me that much. But for some reason, certain people have this kind of like, let's say, energetic gravitas. And I just find myself being a little more anxious and alert, less like relaxed into my meanness. And I know Amani just has that, like such a presence and just centeredness to everything that she does. And so I could feel a little bit of that, but then I'm pretty sure I know where this is going. Let's keep listening. Oh, it's like so cringy. Okay. Like the thought that comes to mind when I think about some of these, like the pressures that can happen when you do have a public platform, because people really, it feels like there is this expectation to speak on things that might not be in your lane. And some people, I think, cave to that and then end up regretting.
Yeah, just a note, like when you say crazy, I think what you mean is like wild, because that's technically like English language. But I'm not trying to call you out or anything. I'm just trying to let you know, because I know that you're sensitive to those things, right? And going forth in those things. So like that's what's called saneism. And basically we compare things that are out of place or do not belong as mental illnesses a lot of the time.
Yeah, can I just thank you for that? Because I have been really trying to strip my language of phrases like that, not just that, but also. Okay, so really quickly, one of the things that was so beautiful, and now that I'm not emotionally activated, because in that, just like anything, when you are being called in, even in the most generous way, which this absolutely was like coming from this like loving, soft place, which is not even always deserved. It still emotionally activates you because on the one hand, you know the type of person you want to be that's like loving and accepting and just really using the type of language that validates every human. And then on the other hand, you're seeing yourself, someone's reflecting to you that your behavior is not reflecting that. This dissonance feels deeply uncomfortable. And so I felt this sort of like zing through my whole body and this kind of tightness, because not only was I dealing with like that feeling, but also I was thinking that here is this person that I think is so cool, that is so amazing, doing such fabulous work. They are seeing that I am not the best ally that I want to be, that I should be. Even though that I'm sure that's not at all what she was thinking. Just for me, that was what I projected onto the situation. And so one of the things that I talked about, I think on the episode after this, is that after this interaction, I like spiraled and had to call a good friend of mine and whatever. And I think this is such a great case, an example of the type of fragility is a charged word, but like us not being anti-fragile, right? Where it's like, instead of allowing my self-concept to be a little bit bendy and movie and to really allow for there to be room that it's like, yeah, I'm going to fuck up over here. And that really didn't feel good, but I'm sorry, that doesn't reflect on my character. But instead of that, a lot of times we default to this like, oh my gosh, this person thinks I'm a bad person. Am I a bad person? I don't feel like I'm a bad person. And all of this kind of emotional activation can be stirred up and make everything super flustery, which then puts a lot of the onus and emotional labor on the other person. And so in reflecting that, even though I was trying to keep it all under lock, one of the things that happened as a result of this interaction is that I cut myself off, I would say, from like my genuine, authentic way of showing up because of this emotional activation. And because of my own blockages after this, I wasn't able to show up as fully as with as much curiosity and as much love as I would have wanted to in the rest of this conversation. And so that's something in reflection that I'm so glad that this moment happened, that it was public, that you all could hear it. It was just such a great lesson all the way around. Okay, so let's keep going because I think it gets worse.
Like excessively violent language and just like really starting to like unpack things, but I can get really wound up and like I didn't even hear myself say it then. So I appreciate you bringing that to my attention.
For me, like, I don't usually tell everybody all the time because it's exhausting to kind of always correct people's language on different things, but like you kind of cringe. But at the same time, I feel like there are people that just genuinely want to move forward in a kinder space. And so like, I have no problem telling them like, hey, that's not okay. But I think that a lot of times we perpetuate so many of these stereotypes without even knowing it, like a lot of the time. And we say things because we want to take up space when that's unnecessary. Like our presence is not needed in every single conversation, but our support is. Does that make sense? Like we don't have to be the center of attention in order to build space. And I really do live by that.
Yeah. And I think that is a really valuable space to inhibit because so much of what we're trying to do is like trying to do things.
I love that. And the way that she rolled with it was just so beautiful. And also acknowledging that it is labor that we do. And what's interesting is since that conversation, I have been so much more aware of sanist language, like lunatic, crazy, like these words that are just so embedded a lot of times. And I've been like, once you're kind of attuned to it, you're like, "Wur, wur, wur," and you hear it. I hear it in interviews. I hear it in my personal life. I've been really mindful when it is appropriate to say things like, I'm really trying not to use that word because of its history and how it can be related to people who have these they're rocking with this stuff over here, and how it's really pejorative the way we use it, blah, blah, blah. And so, it's been really a great mind-bending thing to add another really rigorous moment to language and your conversation. Because the thing that we all know is that when you're trying, when you're in a world of really trying to be intentional and loving and as generous as possible in the way you speak, it's never ending. There's always going to be more and more and more that comes up. And so it's a deeply humbling process. And what it reminds me of is learning another language, that as much as you know, and as much as you try to express yourself or as fluent as you might get to, it's always, if you're not living your day-to-day life, and if you haven't for many, many years where you're learning all types of vocabulary, there are going to be these moments where you stumble, where you're corrected, and it can be a knock to the ego. And honestly, to me, at times, I've felt so embarrassed that I haven't spoken up and let people know that I speak Spanish in moments where that was the unkind thing to do, because that person is maybe struggling speaking in English, but I'm feeling so self-conscious of my Spanish compared to where it used to be that I am not reaching out to this person in a generous way by speaking the language that they feel comfortable in, because I'm worried about being judged. And this, I think, is a perfect analogy for really showing up in spaces and doing quote unquote the work is just knowing that you are always going to be fucking up. Even if you're doing your best, there's no reflection on you. But a part of it is that how quickly can I snap back to my center of gravity, know that I am working toward becoming the best version of myself as possible. And that's going to necessitate feedback and growth and maturing in a lot of ways that don't always feel comfortable. Okay, I love that. Just like shock the shit out of me today, right from the get-go. But that was amazing. Okay, let's roll into clip 2.
I experienced a lot of grief early in my 20s, my late teens and early 20s. And I think there was just like a part of me that just clamped down and was like, this is how we can make our way through the world. And like, so let's operate from this way.
Do you believe that you can have everything that you desire?
I'm like, yes, but I think I don't know.
Oh, okay. Apparently, this anniversary episode is going straight for the jugular. If you haven't listened to this episode with the amazing Amina Altai, yeah, this one went hard. And as I was saying about being in this state where my energy was just so low and really struggling with darkness, this episode just sort of perfectly, presciently landed in that moment. In reflection, I can hear the active attempt at reframing to say something instead of having it just be natural. So like when you say to somebody, when they're like, how are you? When you're thinking, well, I'm horrible. Like my back feels like it's broken and I'm doing this and blah, blah, blah. And then you have this moment where you're trying to say, I'm pretty good. That efforting I can hear in this. Whereas now it just feels like I worked with my chiropractor today and he asked me how I was. And I was just like, great. I didn't have to think about anything. And to me, like that's a gift of being in a better mental space. Okay, let's listen to her genius because this, really, yeah.
What are you afraid would happen if you had everything that you desired?
That I would still be unhappy or empty. I actually had a session with like an intuitive yesterday and we met over Zoom. She was amazing, but she was just like, I'm just tuning into your energy right now. I'm just seeing what you're giving me. And she had said, oh, you're like this really strategic person. You have this ability to put thoughts together, blah, 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 blah. People really respect that, yada, yada. And I'm also sensing this like deep emptiness. And I was just like, whoa, I don't even think I had language for that until it was presented to me yesterday. And I was like, yeah, there is this like really intense emptiness that I'm sure is, tied to all of it.
Can we go deeper? Do you want to?
Okay.
What has been such a gift is in this last little bit, I would say these last few months, people have been presenting themselves in my life. So if you listen to the episode with Beth Handel, Dr. Lyon from a previous episode introduced me to her. And then in working with her and her method, one of my good friends, Alana, introduced me to this intuitive and working with her. So I was talking about the first experience, but actually one of the things that I'm just going to tell you right now, right here, right now, I am dealing with my projection of you rolling your eyes, listening to what I'm about to say, because I was the person who would have rolled my eyes. So just know if you are rolling your eyes, I understand that's actually probably working and integrating my shadow, whatever. But she's basically teaching me how to become an energy worker and like how to feel and sense where my aura is and being able to influence that, being able to, I don't know how to explain it really, but just like being more aware of how to cultivate what we refer to as like your aura, but is also our electromagnetic field. There's a part of me, I've talked about this a lot, I want to be skeptical and uncomfortable and disregard all of this stuff. And I've spent most of my life in that zone. However, things have shifted like these tectonic plates to where I feel like I just keep getting these very intense invitations that feel like playing on a wet field, soccer, it's raining, and somebody kicks the ball and it smacks you on the cheek. Like that kind of stinging, smarting force, I just keep getting hit with. Like energetically, it feels physically a lot of times where it's just like you need to really drop all of the ego, drop all of this skeptical energy, and you just need to be in it and be open. And so in this work, I'm really learning, and through these conversations, honestly, really learning where that source of emptiness is coming from. And it's coming from this separation between myself and this desire to like be successful and be intelligent and be all these things instead of being the human that reflects these things because it's a part of me. So it's interesting working in these modalities because they freak me out. Like the thought, when we talk about in this episode of like ancestors and okay, cool. So you're telling me like I have people around me that are watching me and guiding me. That kind of feels creepalicious. I don't know. But in relaxing into it a bit more, I can feel the effects of the shift happening with me. To be honest, I'm deeply uncomfortable with where it's going to go because I do not like the idea of becoming like a full-on earth mother dancing naked in the moonlight and doing energy work on people. And there's just something about that archetype that feels scary to me, and not in a sense of like, I'm scared of that human, but like it feels so far away from my own self-concept that it feels like if somebody were to say, hey, we're going to snatch your body now and we're going to give it to this other being and they can wear your skin suit, but it's not going to be you. So there's a lot of fear, but there's also this kind of openness and excitement. And that's why I'm grateful for people like Amina that are cracking things open little by little.
Can we go deeper? Do you want to?
Okay. Look at how excited she gets.
Yeah.
Where do you think this emptiness manifests most in your life? Which area? Is it career? Is it body? Is it relationships? Relationship to self? Finances?
It's probably between career and relationship to self.
So if there were a story that you were telling yourself about career connected to the emptiness, what would that story be?
That I'll always be like
Such good
climbing
questions.
and seeking and searching, and it will never be enough. And like, no matter how much other people appreciate, and no matter how much effect or change or contribution that's there, I will still never be able to experience it as anything other than like pop rocks.
Do you believe that's true? That you'll always be climbing and seeking and it'll never feel enough?
I haven't ever felt any other way through my experience.
Let's add until now at the end of that.
Yeah, until now.
I love that reframe.
What would enough feel like? And I'm a stand for radical up level. And I believe that there are seasons in our careers where we need to grow incrementally. And I believe there are seasons where we can have a radical up level. If I were to wave the wand and give you the experience of your dreams that would feel enough, that would feel more than enough, what would that look like?
I would have this company that is providing educational tools and also incubating people to help them be able to transform their life story and who they are into these meaningful assets through podcasts and YouTube and things like that. And that I would experience this sense of meaningful contribution and also like an ease in things, like a trust in the team, in the mechanism that's been built, and know that I contribute something meaningfully, but it could run without me. And I feel like a sense of freedom around my time and energy so I can also connect.
One of the things, in talking about the stream that has always been something that's been very difficult for me as somebody who's neurodivergent, rocking with a lot of stuff, is this idea of really knowing innately that there is a bigness inside of me, that there is an impact scale that is quite different than other people. That's not like saying it in a way like, oh, I'm special or whatever, but I've just always had this understanding that that's where I'm oriented. And then in years of interacting with others, I've realized, some other people don't have that. Okay, so some other people might not understand that for me, having a really meaningful conversation that's one-on-one doesn't feel like I'm living into the fullness of who I am. Having that meaningful conversation live somewhere like a podcast where thousands or tens of thousands of people could benefit and hear it, that feels more aligned with where my energy always has been. In thinking about the stream, one of the things that's been so difficult is in figuring out how I can create this company, create this team, create the mechanism and the strategy and all of this stuff with my own limitations, right? There are a few things that I'm really good at, and then I'm shit-tacular at everything else. If I had come from money and or investors or something like that, we could have filled the team up, gotten it on board, and already be rocking and rolling by now. But that's not my journey. And so what's always felt to me like this stickiness, this blockage, is the fact that I can see it, I know it, I understand it, and it's so real to me. And also, the reality feels way misaligned from that. And sometimes the path there feels so amorphous, so dense with fog that I can't figure out how to take those steps to get to that place. And so you've probably heard me describe it as like it's this chicken and egg sort of thing where I need to get to a certain level in order to get the right team and support and structure in place. But in order to get to that level, I need to have the right team structure and support in place. And that has been something that has been really tough for me in figuring things out. That said, in looking back, the reason this podcast has gone for a year is because there's been an amazing team, starting with the incredible, honorable Brittany Blair Wright, our first producer and one of my best friends in the whole world, and our editor, Danae, who's been with us from the beginning, and then now our producer, Rachel, who is just fantabulous and amazing. It's because of that team that the consistency has been there and that we've continued to put things out. Had it just been me, it would have disintegrated a long time ago. So in understanding that, then I need accountability and I need support in making this thing happen. It's been tough kind of figuring things out, but I can tell you, I feel really confident that things are clicking into place. And in fact, I am working on relaunching my course, Magnetic and Video, where I take a small group of people who have an understanding that video will really help them with their business goals, reaching the right clients, like all of this kind of stuff, and taking them through that process of identifying their magnetic energy, figuring out the content to make, and then to start doing it and support them in all of that. I am really excited to think about that course as being something that can become that foundational level so that I can start getting the rest of the team in place to really take that. I love what she said, and I can't remember what it's called, but that radical up level. Yes, the radical up level to step into that bigger company version that I have in my mind. And so I'm really excited about that because the last few months I've been like forcing it and just in this kind of lax scarcity frustration. And now things just feel like they've cracked open. They're much more clear. And I'm actually excited. I'm excited to promote the course. I'm excited, and we'll put a link in the bio in case you're interested. I'm excited to do this because it feels aligned in this way. To her point, I just feel like things come together much more easily when there isn't this forcing energy. And I feel like that'll always be one of my life meditations, to not force it and let things actually come with ease and trust that they'll happen.
You're smiling like so big.
Well, I was hearing the but. Like the
tell me the but. Tell me the but.
Like the but to me is like recognizing the chasm between where I'm at and how I'm feeling and like that place.
What needs to happen for you to get there?
Just so many things. And because of where I'm at, trying to manage my brain and food and energy and attention and team and content, it just feels like a chicken and the egg sort of thing. That it's like in order to have the support and the clarity and the vision and the rocket fuel to progress, I need to have done enough on my own. But like the doing it, and I say on my own, like I already have amazing people that I work with, but it just feels like a chicken and the egg sort of thing.
Yeah, I totally hear you. And I really, again, want to honor you for like all the invisible labor that it takes to take care of yourself, to feel like you can show up for this work before you can even think about a bigger vision.
Oh, it makes me feel so sad.
What would it look like for you to get free today? Because inside of that context, I also heard freedom. Like you want to design this big, beautiful thing, but you really want to feel free. You want to feel easeful. In the next couple days, what would it look like for you to get free? What would you need to change? What would you need to put down? What would you need to give to yourself to get free right away?
I feel like I would need an internal map for what I need to do in terms of routine and managing energy and all of that stuff. And then I feel like I would need like an external map and route that I can like trust in. So similarly, like when you said, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon was like, here are the steps. I feel like I need internally what I need to do and also externally to believe that like there is an ability to get there.
What needs to happen for you to get the internal map?
Well, I have to do it, but it involves like being quiet with myself and like overcoming the resistance. And there are always like really loud things that need my attention that I would rather procrastinate with.
The freedom is like coming to the surface, right? Like you're asking to get free and there's this emptiness that's happening because you're not arriving there. And so what would it look like to radically prioritize your getting free, that internal map, and forgetting that long list just temporarily, just to support yourself?
I mean, I guess like taking baby steps, not releasing the pressure of everything.
I love that. And compassion, and Rome wasn't built in a day, and you can take one step towards the internal map. It doesn't mean you have to do the whole overhaul today, but one step towards prioritizing it is one step towards feeling more free. And then do you feel like you have resources for the external part, the routine and the mapping energy?
I don't.
What is amazing about that, and also it breaks my heart like seeing where I was at, but one of the things that I just am so grateful for this conversation, for her as a human being, is that she planted this seed, and then there have been these other like seeds that have been planted that it took some time, but it just clicked into place. What happened, and I think part of the reason that I'm feeling like this big tectonic shift is that my tendency is to really complicate things. In my mind, it was like, okay, I need to make enough money to really take the next step, whatever. How can I do that? Oh, I can relaunch my course. Okay. But I told myself that I wanted to relaunch it in this new way, which means that I would have to do brrr, and you could see it just like spiraled. I would get stressed thinking about it. From this conversation, I then had a couple conversations since, and it ended up being one with my amazing mother. I just was like thinking, what is the simplest way I could do it? And I realized I could relaunch it exactly as it was, except of course it will be better because it'll be the second version. Because mind you, nobody had an issue with the first version. It was just me knowing where I would want to take it, where I could go, all of this kind of stuff. So relaunching it as it was, allowing the iterations that I eventually want to have happen unfold more slowly, maybe not even in the second cohort, maybe in the third or the fourth. And that piece of simplicity and clarity just like shifted and removed this whole block. And since then, I've been able to really move forward in this meaningful way. To me, in having conversations, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for this last year, this amazing podcast, and some of the conversations to come are going to blow your mind, some of the people we have scheduled, is just the fact that regardless of what the subject matter is per se, there are always these like little moments that stick with you. And actually, in fact, one of my fabulous friends, Sarah J, you know who you are, she is like this big deal power woman, like just has rocked it, has been a VP at huge companies and blah, blah, blah. Said that very thing to me, that it was just like, yeah, it's interesting what sticks with you. There's always something from these conversations. And that to me is the reason I am so deeply grateful for them, because you can feel probably that I am working through things in real time. Every situation is like stacking on each other and like creating this amazing structure that is all becoming embedded in who I am and becoming a better version of myself. And so, yeah, I am just, I love her. Okay, let's see clip 3. And I am really hoping that I get a little bit of a reprieve here, because the first 2 have been super emotional. And we know that when it comes to emotions, it's like not my fave. So let's see.
I was listening to you, listening to your podcast, and I listened to that episode specifically on journal speak and really trying to understand it. It seems like, in a way, I come from a family of hyperverbal processors, and that is something in a way that we kind of do, right? Like when you find somebody that you can be 100% authentically yourself with, and you start off as a bratty bitch, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this person is an asshole and they did this, blah, 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 blah.
First of all, let me say this was the second episode we ever recorded. The first one was with the amazing Sammy and Stephanie, but this was the second one that we recorded. And it was such a interesting space to be in because I'm somebody who's had conversations my whole life. I'm somebody who has a lot of prep work in having conversations to where I knew podcasting wouldn't be a huge leap, but the act of actually sitting down, actually having a microphone, actually doing this whole thing was so nerve-wracking. And I remember I had flown, it was the first time traveling since COVID, and I was super nervous, flown to my mom's house in Wyoming, which now she lives here, and I'm so fucking grateful for that, and set up in this window with this amazing big deal psychologist, Dr. Nicole Sachs. And there's so much energy and excitement in this episode. It just makes me this is oh, baby Gia. It makes me so happy.
And then what happens is you wind your way into that really generous, loving perspective, that everybody's fundamentally trying to do their best.
Yes.
And everybody's the hero in their own story, and really coming back to that place of generosity. But you can't, for me at least, I have to be able to talk it out. So I haven't tried writing it out. And I'm really excited to try this practice of journal speak to see if I don't have to rely on somebody, because there are very few people in the world that I feel comfortable enough being my full bratty ass self with to wind to that place. But what's interesting to me about it is that it really flips my kind of compulsive need to archive.
Okay, see what's funny now is in hindsight, just the actual skill of having conversations in the structured format is that there were so many moments that she would have jumped in, and that now I would notice and I would pick up on it. And so I would just stop speaking to allow her to respond. And I can tell that I was thinking about, okay, I got to wind it back here and everything. When I talk to people who are curious about starting podcasts, or they've started them and they feel weird and embarrassed about not being good in the beginning or whatever, one of the things that I really say, and this goes for videos too, is that you're definitely going to suck in the beginning compared to where you're going to end up eventually. A part of that is just that you have to own that is an eventuality. You're just going to look back and cringe. And so hopefully you'll want to have compassion for yourself. And so this is a great example of me having this loving perspective for the me that was a year ago, but seeing you should have taken that opportunity. You're missing this. You're talking too much. And she was just so generous and amazing. I just love her.
And so my first impulse was okay, I'm going to save these. I'm going to I have all my morning pages that I've done sporadically over the years saved. There seems there's something cathartic about the release and letting it be ephemeral and just disappear and not having to hold on. Because the other thing that I kind of struggle with, and maybe this gets into toxic positivity, is not wanting to put things into the universe that's negative and trying to actively reframe so that you're not manifesting something that is more negativity in your life. This seems to me it's not on that path of manifesting something negatively, but I could see how somebody might think that it would.
It's a common misconception. So I'm going to tell you straight up though, Gia, that's why your stomach hurts. It's
the toxic positivity.
Yeah. Well, what you just said, that fear of putting something less than positive out into the universe. So here's how I'll explain it. Everything in life is fueled by one of two energies, love and fear. There is nothing in the world that's fueled by anything other than those two. Nothing. Every single thing that is done either in the spirit of love or the spirit of fear. So I'll give you an example. If someone wants to go for a massage, okay, let's say they have back pain and they're going to go for a massage. This is the same massage therapist, same room. This is the first situation, and this would be fueled by fear. Oh my God, I'm going to this massage. This better help. I need to get better. I have that work trip next week. If I don't take that, I could get fired. And my kid has a little league game. I've already missed 3 of them. Okay, I'm going to go breathe. It's going to be great. I'm going to go in there. Let me have a positive attitude about it. This massage therapist is great and recommended.
It totally sounds like me.
I'm going to go in. I'm going to get this massage. It's going to be amazing.
She called it so hard.
Everyone recommends this guy. Okay. That will, by the way, lead you to worse back pain that day. That will lead you to a lot of tremendous amount of fear, and fear leads to fight or flight, and fight or flight leads to more pain signals being sent by your nervous system. Okay. Here's the same exact massage fueled by love. I need to care for myself. And oh my goodness, I would love to just feel someone's hands on me, just to feel in it with somebody else. I've heard great things about this massage therapist. I am just giving this to myself. Self-care is so important. And however this goes, it's okay for me. I'm going to really breathe. I'm going to really just turn off the world. I can't wait to be in this space. I'm so excited. That's the exact same massage. That person will have a wonderful result.
Okay, so what is bananas, seeing this now a year later, is I have now been in that position. And at the time it was #unrelatable, but now it's like, oh my gosh. When I posted first about my back, Nicole actually reached out to me in DM and she was like, hey girl, I love you. Like, you need to get in. Are you doing journals week? And at the time when we recorded this, I hadn't done it yet. But over the last year, I definitely have. And the part of it that's hard for me is just my own thing that I'm working on, is that the tools that are going to be the most transformational for me tend to be the ones that I have the most resistance to. Whether that comes from self-sabotage or lack of feeling worthy, whatever it is, that's just a pattern that I have. What I know is that when I have done journal speak, I have felt this kind of like release that you can just feel in the same way, like when an animal is super scared, shaking, and then the threat's over and they kind of stretch and they do all this stuff that like releases it and take a big sigh, whatever. That is what happens to me. When it came to my back now, I have been really actively, acutely dealing with that. And in working with this chiropractor that I've been seeing twice a week, I've had to remind myself of this conversation because there have been a few times where I've gone in and I've barely been able to move. So I felt myself in this very like thirsty, lack, scarcity type of place where I'm just really needing him to fix me. In being able to catch myself because of this conversation and say, hey, that's coming from fear. Like, let's take a deep breath, center ourselves, and just know that all this work that's happening, that's going to happen today, is serving me, has really helped me, especially on this healing journey that is not quite linear. So it's so amazing to see the like future forecasting of this conversation and to just know that a year later I ended up in this exact position, although my gut stuff has gotten so much better. And I think a lot of that has to do with me having multiple modalities for getting the gunk out and really learning to cultivate thoughts and energy that are coming from more of this place of love rather than fear.
Everything in life is fueled by love or fueled by fear. And the thing is, it's really hard sometimes to change our lens to the lens of love because we are in fight or flight already. That's the problem. It's like a negative cycle that we're in. When you, and I'm not only speaking directly to you, but when one leads with toxic, what is it? Would you call it? Toxic positivity. I love that. I haven't really quite framed it like that. When someone leads with toxic positivity, that's fear. I need to be positive or else. I need to be positive or I'm not manifesting the secret. You know, Abraham would be mad at me. Like that kind of thing. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because positivity must be genuine or it's just read by the nervous system as fear. Now, let's say you said, let me be curious. Maybe the lens of life is wider than I realized. Maybe doing journal speak and saying these ugly things is not putting negativity. It's finally sitting with my inner child after all these years and saying, girl, I'm not leaving you alone anymore. I can sit with you through the pain of being 13. I can sit with you through the pain of your parents' divorce or your eating disorder or your best friend's suicide or all these things that we sit with. I'm not leaving you alone anymore, but I know what that means. And that means sometimes I'm going to have to say some dark stuff because dark stuff happened and I'm not denying it anymore. What if you looked at life through that lens? Would it seem negative still?
No, but do you know what it feels like even listening to you say that? It feels like sitting on the couch while your parents are trying to talk to you about the idea of sex.
What's so funny to me about that is that like the resistance is so clear that it was just like, but, I don't want to do this thing. It doesn't seem like it would feel good. I don't like being quiet in my brain. I don't like feeling my feelings. And this year, I'm really grateful to say, has had so much transformational growth because of that conversation kicking it off. And then so many others, both in the podcast and then outside in my real life, around this theme of honoring what is, expressing and releasing what's there, and then choosing how to move forward. And I'm definitely not coming from a place of like, I have it all figured out, because we know that like just 4 days ago, I was crying to myself, laying on the floor thinking, oh my God, poor me. My life sucks so badly. I can't even blah, 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 blah. And being deeply mired in this place of self-pity. And so who knows? I might be back there again at some point, probably, assuredly. But what I feel so excited about is that there are these tools to come back to. There is Journal Speak and a lot of these other modalities that I've had exposure to that are just so amazing. And like right now, I don't have any pain in my back or in my leg. I don't think that's a coincidence. And actually, in looking at when the sciatica situation really started to activate, it was around the time of our breakup. Even though at the time of recording that episode, I had a lot of skepticism that was just coming from my own ego bullshit. Now seeing that, yeah, I had kind of had little zings here or there for the last couple of years after an initial injury that also happened to coincide with like some fighting and arguing with my DAD. Then it went from casual zings, not a big deal, not impeding my life, to wow. I was like yelping, moving around. It became just this huge thing that also collided with this huge emotional energy that I didn't want to deal with. And then coming around the corner, I decided that in my like filthy, whatever, controlling sort of thing, that I was going to force my way out of it. So again, not listening to my body, I decided to weightlift and to go from 0 in terms of working on a movement to literally 129. That was such an arbitrary number. 0 to 100. Okay, we don't need to be special with it. So that I was getting going and doing these movements and with loaded weight and everything that I knew was hurting it. But I did it anyways because I wanted to force my way into the life that I wanted. And then it was just like, no, babe. Nope. No. We're going to like stop the whole presses. We're going to put you in a place where you are literally still. All you have is yourself. You can't walk. You can't sit up. You can't do any of this stuff. You can't really distract yourself. You're going to have to deal with things. And of course, I did distract myself. I watched a lot of Netflix. I watched a Discovery of Witches, Singles Inferno, all this kind of stuff, which I don't regret. But also, there just had to be these moments where I was coming up against it. And I've been doing a lot of, not as much as I would like, but I've been doing a lot of quiet, still work, Journal Speak, also the daily practice from To Be Magnetic, which are kind of like these meditation, guided meditation sort of things to work through stuff. So I've been doing a lot more than ever before. And, I'm growing. It's progress. Okay. Penultimate clip. Let's go. So I'm really curious about, from your perspective, what happened for you. This is just like key moments of Gia being a vulnerable, fumbling, lovable asshole. And just like failing her way through things, which is literally like what has happened this year. And I'm happy to have my vulnerability on display if we can all feel seen by it. But what I loved about this moment, and there have been a few instances on the podcast where I'm having a conversation with somebody that I have deep rapport with. And so it's not this process of building rapport, getting to know each other, and kind of that energetic dance that you do with somebody that you don't know and you're going into a more intimate conversation. This was somebody that we have so much history, but we hadn't spoken in so long. And so I really appreciate his willingness to say, okay, like, let's have our reunion on film and have some awkward conversations. So let's hear it. And how our perspectives align or misalign, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. After my long-term relationship, I was like really like wanting love and acceptance from the people around me. I felt like very abandoned. I just ended up feeling alone again. Like I had fought my whole life wanting to have a family, wanting to feel like I was a part of a family, and like I was, and then like I wasn't. And I felt like really lost. And you were like my closest friend that like I had a crush on. And so it was like this like weird dynamic where I was like, you know, like you're like, oh, I eeny, meeny, miny, you, like I chose the sister. But then like as time went on, like I kind of always like had like a little bit of a crush on you as we were friends. You know, it was just like something that was always there. And so then I think, and not that it ever needed to be acted upon. Like I feel like as an adult, I'm like, oh, I could tell it would have been a good relationship. It wouldn't have, like, we don't have compatible like life goals or paths, you know. But like back then I was like, I'm alone, I need love and acceptance. Like I just was like asking more of you than you had to give to me, you know, as far as like time and attention. And like
we would have like literally clawed each other to bits just to put that out there.
I was being unrealistic about like who I was and what I wanted. Like I was just like, I need someone new to validate, you know. And you had always been somebody that was there to validate me. And then like we had this whole thing with our other friend. I think that was the thing that really pushed me over the edge, was like I had like kind of bared my soul to you, being like, I think I've always liked you, so like maybe we could do something, you know. And you were like, you're being foolish, Saya, which like I was being foolish.
Did I say that though? I mean, that sounds like a kind of jackassery thing but I did.
Yeah. You told me that I was being foolish, and you were like, what are you going to do? You're going to get rid of your cats and dogs? You're going to like, you're just going to like, yeah, like you
so
you shot me down pretty hard, but it's okay. It was in like a, like, come on, Saya kind of a way. And so it wasn't like a, like me, like, it was just like a, like, you know?
Oh, so cringy. Well, and the thing is that I don't think I really talked about in the episode is that I had also this whole history of being like being a tomboy. Most of my childhood friends were guys, and the people that were closest to me, I felt the most safe, the most myself around guys. And then what started to happen as I got older and like hormones came into the equation is I started to feel like I couldn't trust them anymore because they were, I couldn't tell if maybe they liked me or not. And I just was never interested in that. And I think when that is paired with also the fact that because of my physicality, I was often sexualized at a younger age by grown ass fucking men. And so there was this very much like this disowning of my own sexuality and just wanting to like clamp in and be this kind of, I mean, I guess the best way to put it is like asexual buddy human. And so I just had so much pain around that idea of like, hey, I trust you. And especially when I came out and I had all of these friends that at the time identified as lesbians, but a lot of them now identify differently. But it was the same thing where it was just like, I need to have you either in this buddy category where there's nothing that's ever going to happen, or you could be in this kind of like question mark category where we both know that there's a little bit of tension there. Because Saya was so firmly set in the buddy category, also because at the time right before this, his big partner, life partner, is also one of my best friends, was then and is now. And so even because of that, there was like zero way ever that I would have entertained anything, because to me, it's like, you know, with your close friends, your siblings, your cousins, like you don't double dip. So for all of those reasons, I think I had a hyper reaction that was deeply suboptimal. And I wish now, because hindsight's 2020, that I could look back and be able to approach it and also like honor the fact that it is really scary to put yourself out there and to say how you're feeling and to really express that. And I wish that instead of being in my emotions and reacting in this super blunt way, which was my defense mechanism, that is still pretty active, that I was able to really have like a softer landing for him and him saying this to me, even though the outcome would have been the same of me saying, that's not a fit, that's not where I'm at all. I wish that I had been able to, react with some sort of emotional maturity, but live and learn.
But like the next week you like fucked our other butch friend. And then like,
right.
The thing for me was that you didn't tell me about it.
Yeah, just
and then all
dismissal.
3 of us hung out the next day. And y'all were all like, you know?
You know now that the reason was because that person was freshly sort of not quite totally out of that relationship. And so I was like really trying to make sure that there was an overlap.
But I could keep a secret. I could keep a secret.
That's true.
I don't care about that bitch. I don't know her. I knew you.
That's true.
You were my best friend. And I was just like, what the shit is this? It just like, I felt like it put me, because I had been vulnerable, and then it like put me in like emotionally triggering situation, like, you can't hide that shit from me.
Let me rephrase. At the time, I don't think he could have, given the situation, like really held on to that secret in a way that would have felt okay for me. However, now our relationship has grown since this conversation, because we went to not speaking for 5 years to now regrowing a friendship in a wonderful way. And now he's somebody that I would trust. And I have had conversations about the way that I'm feeling and what's going on in my life. And we've had those together in a really like loving way. And so, yes, now I totally trust him 100%. At the time, it just seemed like a little too sticky and intertwined.
I've acted like a baby my whole life until like, the past 5 years. I like have managed to finally grow the fuck up. But like when shit didn't go the way that I wanted it to go, I would just like, fine, fuck you, peace out. I burn bridges faster than I build them, or I have in the past. I'm trying to be better about that.
See, and I love that. And that's why I love these types of conversations and I want to do more of them on the podcast, where it's also like me with people in my real life, because I think that it takes so much. Like I think of my conversation with my mom also, that it just takes so much to be able to say how you fucked up and really talk about why. Not in a way that's excusing, but that's creating context and take ownership and create space. And all of that is such a beautiful, nuanced way of relating to somebody, way of seeing the past version of yourself with like grace and love and also accountability. It's so beautiful. And I don't really think I have many examples of my life of hearing those conversations with other people. And so that's why I'm so grateful for this conversation, because he just owns so much. I mean, I think we both did, but particularly like just the fact, that he was like, I was a baby about everything. Like that kind of stuff can be so hard when it's still stuck in like that ego place of wanting to hold on to things. And that's how, like somebody like him has grown tremendously. And I just love him.
Answer me this though. Was the 5-year plan a thing? Was that actually a thing?
What are you talking about? Like,
okay, you don't know what I'm talking about? Okay. That person said to me when they were talking to you before that you knew that we were sleeping together. Sorry, this is like totally awkward and weird, but we're trying to like leave this other person out of it.
Somebody actually said that you were that I said that you were my 5-year plan.
Yes, that it was that you had a 5-year plan with me, that you were going to just hang around and be my best friend, and that eventually I was going to realize that you're the one.
No. I love the things that people say that I say behind my back.
And that is why like really like laying everything out, that is a part of reason is like, to me, in my understanding, there was a clandestine nature to it, that it was not all the cards were on the table because I had heard this. Now, since this episode aired, that person that we were talking about who relayed the information to me that we were all quite close around had a very strong reaction to the episode airing and a very strong reaction to all of this conversation. It was really emotionally like tough for me because the way that they were presenting their objection was with a lot of like name calling and all that kind of stuff. But also the fact that this is, to me, the reason I stand behind it, the reason I think that it's important to have these conversations about our perspectives is that it doesn't even matter so much at this point what the truth was. I both believe Saya and this other person, even though their stories are conflicting about this 5-year plan sort of thing. To me, it doesn't matter because that was the information I was rocking with that really motivated my interactions along with my deep-seated stuff. It doesn't matter at this point, but I think in looking at why I reacted so harshly again is that it felt like that trust had been broken in such a meaningful way because of course, you're going to share and express yourself differently with somebody that you truly believe is a buddy, a platonic friend who's going to be there for you through thick and thin versus somebody who has their eye on you, who wants to potentially be a partner to you or like have some kind of sexual encounter with you. Like there's just a different energy. And so it's that feeling of, I place my trust in a situation that wasn't the actual situation. You knew it wasn't, but I didn't. That doesn't feel good to me. My reaction here of laughter, a part of that is a defense mechanism to me to try to lighten the nervous energy that I had around like this whole topic, because it was very tough for me navigating all of that at the time.
What is this, Dawson's Creek?
I'm pretty sure that was a part of my douchebaggery in like responding to you is because I had heard that and I was just like, what the fuck? Like to me, at least in hindsight, I get that like, if those were like the feelings, let's say, let's just go with this for this hypothetical, I can understand that it would be awkward to say it out loud. So I can understand withholding that information. But at the time, I was just like, you're my best friend. I trust you with everything. And you're secretly like plotting and planning that I'm going to magically figure out that you're the one after all of this time of me crying on your shoulder. So, okay, so that wasn't a thing. Good to know. Okay. Telephone is a bitch.
I smoke too much weed to do that much of long-term planning.
That's true. Yeah, that tracks there.
What is oh wow. Yeah. What I love about that is just the ability to resolve through communication. Yeah, so that was definitely one of the more wild ones. Okay, I'm so curious. This is the last clip. We'll see how it goes.
I had an episode. Oh. Now we know who it is, but
okay, first, I just need to say, I fucking love these two from the QVT podcast. So it makes me so happy that they're in here. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I fucking loved them, still do. They're amazing. And they came on this podcast and I went on their podcast and yeah, just all the feels.
The one with Sonia Renee Taylor, right? It totally triggered my fangirl.
Because you love her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just like, oh my God. And so I was like overthinking everything. And I was just like, oh my gosh, bitch, you got to show up as yourself. You got to show up as yourself. But then it would be like, but how would I ask this as myself? Because I don't want to seem like a fangirl. But then I feel like I normally would be this complimentary. And I just like was so, it ended up being fine. But I couldn't listen to the episode for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Even in editing, because I was so like in my head about, and she was so generous and wonderful and like all the things. I really deeply value other people sharing that journey as well, and like saying like, yeah, this is all a new art form for all of us. And so being able to have people be able to see in real time where you're going, what you're doing, I think is really phenomenal. Most people don't, like they archive their first 500 Instagram posts,
Yummy. Yeah,
and
I did that.
I love that like this clip came back around to what I was saying earlier because I forgot about that interaction where I was just like, so at the time we were doing debriefs, Brittany and I, which never really took off. I mean, at some point I would love to like come back to the idea of doing the conversations and then me and somebody that like, we just vibe so hardcore talking about the conversations, because to me, I love like that, like check-in afterwards, but it was way too much work. And there was a lot of stress involved at the time and putting them out there. So we ended up not doing those as we move forward. One of the things I remember is that I was supposed to watch it for the debrief and I just like couldn't, like, I just felt so like, about it. And what's interesting is that when I did finally watch it back later, it was so minuscule, the stuff I was cringing at, that I'm sure 90% of people would not even pick up on it. And to me, this is so emblematic of the kind of stories that we tell ourselves that stop us from doing whatever that thing is. And Ira Glass talks about this, where in terms of creativity, where it's like you start off being an artist because you have great taste, but as you're getting started, you have enough taste to know that you suck. And that chasm, that dissonance is the thing that stops most people, because it's so hard to get through the suck when you are so acutely aware of the fact that you're sucking, compared to somebody else who like has no idea, think they're hot shit all the time. They will keep doing it because they're getting this type of positive affirmation, and their skills probably advance over time. But for people like the three of us that are so wanting to do a good job, listen to podcasts and like have that container of like, oh, knows what it sounds like when it's really in the pocket, and then knowing that you're not hitting it all the time, like that is really, really tough. And one of the things for me in these conversations has been, and actually this extends to like anything that I do, is trying to set up my own criteria for success that is not related externally and is something that is stripped down from my goal. So creating this type of disparity between what I'm aiming for and what success looks like. Whereas usually I think those are like inverted, where what you're aiming for and what success looks like are very close together and they're very high and lofty. To me, it's like I want to create a baseline level that allows me to be successful that happens whilst I'm aiming for something that's quite lofty. And to me, when it comes to like this podcast, for example, is there value in the conversation? That am I showing up as authentically as I can? Am I able to help create a container that reflects the amazingness of this individual? And do they feel like this conversation was worth their time, enjoyable, and that they got to express what they wanted to? And having those as my own internal metrics have really helped me in moments where it's, I feel like, oh, I'm not performing as best as I should, or I don't have the energy that I should, and just getting all in my head about it. Because even though I'm shooting for like Oprah Winfrey level of an incredible conversation every time, I know that that's not the reality of what's going to happen every single time. But allowing that to manifest has been really, really helpful for me in being able to plug along. Because one of the things that I've really learned about creativity, production, success is that it really is about consistency, which I hate to say, you hate to hear. Like, it's just such a trope at this point that doesn't really feel real, but it is so real that it really is about just showing up and knowing the ratio. And one of the things that I talked about when I was doing commercial photography is I would share a quote from Annie Leibovitz where she was talking about film, where at the time you would get 36 images on a roll of film. So 36 chances for an image. And she would say if she got one on a roll of 36, it was a good day. Like that was her ratio. That was so transformational for me, and something that I would share with clients when I would do photographic sessions and portraits is I would say like, hey, we're not going for like every image is a banger over here. We're going for, if one of the top photographers in the world has a ratio of 1 of 36, we are not going to be aiming for anything higher than that. So it created this freedom to play, knowing that not everything is going to be like a banger. And actually, I forgot about this when it came to like TikTok and social media. The burnout that made me stop posting from essentially July, like 6 months on TikTok, is because I was getting into this, everything needs to hit, everything needs to land, everything needs to perform a certain way. And I forgot like this ratio that, oh my gosh, I'm like having this epiphany in real time. This is amazing. This ratio of 1 to 36, where if you're hitting that, you're doing well. Really allowing that criteria to be okay, allowing the flops and the stumbles to exist, and knowing that I am not putting my whole full value on the line every time I produce something, which is something I definitely used to do as a creator and as an artist. Would feel like, everything and my whole soul is going into this. So if it flops, I'm flopping. but instead to allow the thing to exist separately from me and to have a level of success that is attainable, which has been really amazing.
I think it's amazing when you show all the shit.
I just deleted mine, but I think she was like, I was like, you know what? No. But
the realness, I love them.
There's definitely been episodes where I have been so embarrassed maybe in the moment, or like thinking that thing of like, oh, I came in too hot and whatever. And that may be true, but in listening back, I'm like, oh, that was way worse in my head. And I honestly think having this past year of recorded dialogue, that without a recording, I would have sat up at night 3 years later being like, I can't believe you said that fucking thing, you stupid fucking slut bitch. Like, that's what would have happened. And having this thing in my head that is like, oh, I mean, was it a little whatever? But it also was like half of a second that only you are going to hold on to. Everyone else is going to hold the rest of the 27 minutes or whatever the fuck, you know? So having that as a space of documented reflection to be able to look back and offer myself grace, I've also found very helpful. It's really helped undo some of these processes that I've had around replay in my head.
And I think that it also helps with, I mean, our listeners, I think, understand that we're being vulnerable with this podcast. Even us talking about it right now and making fun of the fact that those first few episodes were trash, like just bad, like audio quality.
Everyone was so fake nice about it.
Everyone was so fake nice. I was like, oh my God, y'all really like it? Y'all fucking hate it. Just like whatever. So but we put it out there in the world. We were vulnerable about it. Like we listened back. We understood what we needed to like grow from and what we needed to do. But we wouldn't have gotten there if we didn't put ourselves out there like that. And I think that is just a lesson for people are always craving vulnerability. I don't think anybody on this planet is like, you're vulnerable, like stay away from me.
And are more forgiving of it. Like, if you are naming that you're coming from a place of maybe this isn't perfect, there's much more forgiveness and grace there than coming from it of like, this is the best thing I've ever done, eat it, bitch.
Which is also a fabulous energy to have too. But yes, and I love the insight that they're sharing, because I feel like this is one of the big conversations that we've been having culturally, is this idea of cancel culture and the fact that it is super harsh to cancel people, blah, blah, blah. And of course, we're not talking about the instances where it is very black and white, where somebody has abused someone. Like there are certain circumstances where it's like, yes, but there are a lot of circumstances that are very gray area. And I think I was watching a TikTok where somebody was talking about the reason why the Kardashians haven't been canceled. And what this person was saying is that it's because they've never claimed or positioned themselves as people who are morally in a certain light or showing up. And it's more about that air of positioning yourself as somebody who has it together, positioning yourself as an industry leader, positioning yourself as X, Y, and Z. That the more you can show up authentically, the more you can show up vulnerably and just say like, hey, I'm a person who's out here trying to figure it out just like everybody else, and I'll probably fuck up, but I'm going to try my hardest. It gives you a stronger footing so that it's more difficult for people to come in and have a lot of this harsh criticism, because it's like, hey, I never said I was perfect. And I'm going to show my learning moments in real time. I'm going to reflect and I'm going to grow from this, but I'm not claiming that I have everything together. Because as soon as you do, that's when I think people really try to poke holes.
It's a lot easier to be like, I mean, it's not great, but I'll have another serving or whatever.
It's fine. Just like put a little bit more salt on it next time. Okay. Like, thank you for that. You know, like, and y'all need to put some salt on your food.
That was 100%. Like, that could have been a Gia-ism, like circa 2009. Just like, I am serving you fucking 3 Michelin star shit right now. Eat it, bitch.
Eat it, bitch. Yeah.
Why are you not enjoying?
I do say that, and I'm also going to directly contradict myself in that, like on something like Legendary or like in Ballroom, like you have to serve it like that. So it's like this mixed thing of like, there is vulnerability in pretending you're the shit sometimes. I think it takes that kind of like stepping back from that conversation every now and again to be like, LOL, you know, like, you know, like
See, and this is why I love this conversation, is because it is nuanced. And so in one moment that we can say, this is the way it is, we can also say, but this is also the way it is. And to me, that ability to like dance in between the lines and allow for there to be space for this and that, as I say all the fucking time, is just like fucking beautiful and amazing.
I think we're confident in our vulnerability.
Yes.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Like we confidently go into it like, I am confident that we are not going to get this right. But we're going to do it. We're going to try it. We're going to make an attempt today and learn from it. And again, this all goes back to, again, what I think this theme has been about, like, we're not necessarily right. What is our fucking like slogan? Like, we may be therapists, but we're not your therapist. Like, I am not here to tell you what to do with your life because I barely have mine figured out. But like, what I will do is be vulnerable with you and share with you what's going on. There might be some nugget of information in there that's going to be helpful and impactful to your life. And that is the joy of doing this podcast. That is the joy of having the guest on that we have. I think that there are so many topics we know nothing about or that we like are not super close to. There are communities that we don't know anything about that we don't identify as. And I find a lot of the joy in approaching those subjects coming from this vulnerable place of, I'm just here to learn.
Or there's that. And there's also like what happened with you, whereas like I didn't realize or know that we were going to end up having these connections on how we thought, right? And so then having this conversation that led there and then allowed me to kind of like twist my brain to even think about, how do I think about how I think? And I thought about it a little bit before, but entering into this conversation where someone's like, I know what you do and I want to meet you there. Like that was an offering that unlocked things for me too, you know?
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. The access to people and to conversations. Once you set something up, like here's this thing, and if people like it, they're in. And you can have conversations with people. There's no way you should know. Like, and then you end up building these connections. And I'm like, there's some people, I mean, almost everybody. I was like, I should have just said everybody. Some of those people I fucking hated.
You're like episode 7, 3, and 4. No, I'm sorry. Don't use those numbers.
Real quick. Oh my gosh. See, they are so amazing. I'm kind of flabbergasted from the flood of emotions that I'm having because I don't think I, like you, maybe take the time to really reflect on what has accumulated, what you've done, what you've lived through, and really like honor and really look at it and love it without a sense of criticality. And this past year has been fucking incredible. I just feel so grateful to be able to do this. I feel grateful to have people, the amazing conversations that we've had. I feel grateful that you listen and that you like it and you show up, which is just mind-boggling to really entertain that there are people all over the world and really all over the world. Spotify does this yearly recap and it shows like there's a gaggle of you in Germany. There's a solid hangout space in Sweden. It's just like in looking at the map there in India, there are a whole bunch of you listening. Like it's just amazing to think about the reach and the resonance. And I am just so, so grateful for that. So in wrapping up, I just want to share, because I'm in a manifesting kick mood now, baby. I'm going to share like kind of my thoughts and goals, and maybe we can manifest these together. So I feel like this year has been amazing. I also have fronted all of the costs for the podcast, and I haven't been thinking of this as like, oh, this is a labor of love, right? Whatever. I'm just going to put money into it, all this stuff, because it has been a lot of money to get the rock star team that we have. But I knew I was planting seeds, and I want this to become a self-sustaining entity. So as a part of that, we haven't done any sponsorships this year. This coming year, I want to really strategically partner with brands that have a resonance that I find value in, that in sharing about and you learning about and interacting with, you would get value from. And so to me, one of my big goals this year is to build from that place. So there is this financial stability, there is this scalability, and to have the resources to put more into marketing it pretty much, because podcasting is a weird Wild West in a lot of senses where there isn't a lot of crossover between other platforms. So if you're somebody who's like on Facebook, the odd that you're going to click on a link to then take you to a podcast, because those experiences are so different, very slim. So really figuring out how to position the podcast in a way that it's really discoverable, that people can find it, is something that I want to have the resources to be able to put funds and energy into that. And then also really thinking about having on more guests who resonate, who are living boldly, who have interesting, fascinating life experiences and stories to tell. We've been so incredibly lucky, especially the people who said yes in the beginning, that, when there was like nothing behind us except a logo and an idea. I just want to keep that traction moving forward. And so with that, if you have anybody who you really feel like should be on the podcast, we'll have a link in the show notes that you can add. You send an email, add their name, and just put them on our radar, because we would love to just have another year of amazing, incredible people. But also, like, secretly for me, I want this to really grow. And one of the biggest reasons for that is I want a tight community, and I want a place where you all can interact and engage, and we can do things. We can have events and meetups. And so for me, in order to do that, there has to be a degree of scalability, a degree of discoverability. There has to be a strategic component to really gel everything together. So this year, I feel like year one was about consistency and validating the idea and doing it. And this year is really going to be about scalability and like doing what we do, having the conversations and packaging them, putting them in the way of people so that they can find this podcast and we can grow together. So with all of that said, I'm going to put some serious manifesting energy into it. And if you want to help with that, the best way is just, as you listen to episodes, sharing them on your Instagram and tagging us or sending it to a friend. Podcasts really grow because of word of mouth. And for you, this week, I hope you get out there. I hope you rock it. I hope you get in touch with that like internal fire within you, that desire to express the boldest version of who you are, the desire to be authentic, to just have your aura take up the whole fucking building, and to really live up to that version of yourself that is the most magnetic, the most resonant, the most loving, the most kind, the most wise. All of those things. You're capable of that. I fucking love you. And I will see you next week. Bye.